To date, BMW has never built an M version of the 7 Series, but they did build this. This is one of only 2 Works BMW race cars. This is a 745i campaigned by Tony Viana in the 1986 Wesbank Modified series. Let's check it out. Campaigned to victory during the 1986 South African Touring Car Championship season by BMW South Africa, this BMW 745i is one of only 2 Works race cars in existence, and one man is the proud custodian of both. This is Paolo Cavalieri, founder and owner of Pablo Clark Racing, one of South Africa's top racing teams, who has kindly invited us out to Zwartkops Raceway just outside of Johannesburg for an encounter with his SA motorsport legend. Paolo was a teammate of Tony Viana's in period, and he's also responsible for restoring both racing 745i's to their former glory. The first was built to Group 1 specification, a class which it dominated during the 1985 season. That car currently resides at Pablo Clark Racing's HQ. There's some fascinating history to that car. It had an almost complete road spec interior, and the steering wheel was worn away from Tony Viana's wedding ring, as he wasn't a fan of using racing gloves. The next year, BMW South Africa let loose and returned with an even more modified version for the Wesbank Modified series, boasting fiberglass widebody, massive front splitter, and an enormous wing out back. Despite its unusual underpinnings, who would have thought a luxury barge would be rapid on track? This car also proved a fearsome competitor, winning the championship yet again with Tony Viana behind the wheel. These also spawned an ultra-limited run of South Africa-specific 745i homologation special road cars, of which only 255 examples were made, including just over a dozen manual cars. Now, a 745i was also sold in Europe, but that car was fitted with a turbocharged M1-02 inline 6 that wouldn't fit in the right-hand drive chassis. Which brings us to the most interesting aspect of these SA specials, the engine. BMW South Africa imported the M88 straight-six engine from the M1 supercar and plonked it into this executive luxury saloon, turning it into a true track monster. But that was no easy feat. So Paolo, could you just tell us a bit about the engine swap? Why did they do it? What was the motivating factor? And what were the challenges they faced when they put this engine in this car?
Sure, so this is a what we called Wesbank Modified. It was a race series for what in Europe we'd probably call Group 2 cars. So modified saloon cars, another definition. And the competition was fierce in 1986. It was the Mazda RX-7, which was a beautiful car, beautiful handling, beautiful aerodynamics, and an engine that had a lot of options from a modification point of view. There was the Ford Sierra V8, which was a South African special. You can imagine in modified form as well, really, really quick. And the race circuits that we were on in those days were long circuits, like the old Kyle Army. So power was a big factor, obviously handling too.
How much power was this making?
So we've been having debates about that. We think around 460 horsepower. And the only car in production in South Africa at the time was the South African version of the 745. So it was a 745 with fuel injection. And in Europe, the 745 was a turbo car. But because of the right-hand drive here, the turbo was on the right-hand side. They couldn't fit the turbo engine with the right-hand drive.
So they had to get the M88.
And so they went with the M88 engine, which is famous for being the M1-Engine. And Paul Roche used to close his ears whenever Tony would speak to him about this car, because I think he revved it to 10,000 revs.
Wow.
Seriously. And perhaps needed to rebuild the engine more frequently than Paul would have liked. But the car was competitive. It was extremely well driven by Tony, and Tony managed to win the championship. There are amazing videos of races at Kyle Army with these cars, and they looked absolutely amazing. And you'll see the guys with no gloves racing these cars.
Yeah, we saw on the 1985 car the mark from his wedding ring on the steering wheel.
Yes, exactly.
So cool.
Yeah.
Could you tell us a bit about Tony Viana and his importance in South African motorsport history? Yes. What was it like being his teammate, that sort of thing?
He raced in Mazdas in Group 1 successfully. Before that, he drove the Fiat 131 Abarth, which was a Group 1 special that beat everybody in the day. He then drove an XR6 Cortina, also in Group 1. He had a Chev Forenza that he raced in modifieds. Used to be called One Lap Tony at the time because the Forenza wouldn't last more than a lap. A family of Portuguese origin, but very much South African and Afrikaans. And Tony was a tinkerer. And he was what, unfortunately, you don't see anymore today. He was a preparer driver. And this is an official BMW racing car, as were the cars that he raced on behalf of BMW. And he'd prepare them in Oudendaalsrus. He had a rolling road dynamometer. He'd put the car on the dyno, run it for 10 minutes, get in, drive to the circuit on the public roads. He had the key to the circuit. And this is where the big difference comes, like Ferrari with Viana in the day. The more you test, the faster you go. And Tony had a racetrack at his disposal, and he'd go and test until the car was quick, and as a driver he was competitive, very patient, very wise, wouldn't get into big scraps, was a driver you could trust in a corner, and he won many championships. So BMW decided to come back into motor racing in 1981, and the last race of the in 1982 they came back. The last race of the 1981 season, I was racing a Mazda, Tony was racing his XR6, we finished first and second, and BMW approached us and said, come and drive our cars. So that was the start for him of his journey with BMW South Africa that lasted more than a decade, with many, many championships won and many successes, from Group 1 into modifieds, into what became Group N, and then the touring cars that we saw overseas that also came to South Africa.
So this car's been turned into a bit of an art car.
Yes.
Could you tell us about the artist and the idea behind the art, the concept?
Yes, the artist is Sam Tlengetwa, a contemporary artist here in South Africa, really well known for his oil paintings and his collages. A car collector as well. And when we came across this car, which had been identified or located by Nick Schuard, who started a restoration, and then Alex Sepnich and his team at Evolution 2 completed the restoration of the car. I've always been enamored with art, and met Sam, and I thought, why don't we ask him to paint the top and the rear section of the car, keeping the sides and the front pretty much in the original Winfield colors. And so Sam said, well, what do you want me to do? So I said, well, I'll bring the car to you, and you can do what you want. And so he painted scenes of Johannesburg, the old Johannesburg for us, the Carlton Hotel, which was a big 5-star hotel in downtown Johannesburg, the train station and the trains that ran to Soweto. And then BMWs are famous for spinning in South Africa. And so inside, the collages we have inside the car are 3 Series BMWs called Gushesh. So I think Sam did a great job in taking the history of Johannesburg and bringing it into where we are today.
And so this might be reiterating some of what we've talked about already, but what makes these cars so special in the history of South African motorsport and just BMW motorsport in general?
Well, first of all, 1985 and 86 South African champion, the Group 1 car, and this car for 86. I think that's special. It's a title winner. But more importantly, it was the days when manufacturers in South Africa were allowed to produce South African specials, just to go and win a race on a Saturday so that they could sell the cars on the Monday, and so that you could take the kids to school on the Monday in a similar looking car. And so hats off to BMW, because they, in more than any other manufacturer in this country, produced a lot of one-off specials. When I say one-off, they were homologation specials, so they had to produce a minimum of 200 of these cars, which they did, the 3 Series, the 7 Series, the 333. Yeah, amazing. And so that's the history of BMW in South Africa in motorsport, and the beauty of having been able to take twice a 7 Series, which I'm told, folklore tells us that the board of BMW in Germany said, don't race this car anymore. You can race it for one season, God help you if you don't win, and then after that, we know nothing. So, I've had people look at this car and think it's a 6 Series, but it's not, it's a 7. And it takes some quite bold decisions at the leadership of BMW to be able to say, we're going to go and race it because we can prove that sheer driving pleasure, which is their motto, is absolutely alive and well on the circuit and on the road, even in a 7 Series.
Lastly, what's this thing like to drive?
It's lovely. It's lovely. It's quite powerful. We've got a lot of rubber on this car, so the handling's great. We tested it without the wing. It actually went faster.
Really?
So I think the wing was there to give Tony a little bit of confidence. And the brakes are really, really sharp, but need to be managed really well because they lock up pretty easily. and the rear locks up pretty easily, but I think we've got a decent balance. We have Bilsteins all around, which is part of the history of the car. Ted Garstang was Mr. Bilstein in South Africa and in South African motorsport, and he joined us with Evolution 2 to tune the car so that we could get it competitive again. In fact, the last time it was out here, it won, but that's a while back.
Amazing. Paolo, thank you so much. Really
Thank you,
appreciate
Mike.
it.
What's fascinating is these cars serve as a reminder of how big modern cars have become. A modern day 3 Series is bigger than the 745i, while a modern day 7 Series with its hybrid drivetrain weighs over a ton more than this race car. However, no matter how unlikely a motorsport champion, these 745i's remain a proud symbol of South African ingenuity and what can be done when you ask for forgiveness rather than permission.